This interview is being conducted for the Veterans History Project at the Library of Congress. My name is Walter Napolitan, and I am interviewing Francis McCormac in the beautiful town of Ocean City, New Jersey, at his daughter's home on February 8th, 2015. Also present with us is Brett Pauser, and he is running the camera. So we'll begin some of the questions, and we'll just take it from there. Okay, so the first questions will just be, like biographical questions.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So where and when were you born, Francis McCormac?
I was born in Philadelphia, Port Richmond, on May the 18th, 1921.
And who were your parents, and what were their occupations?
Well, my mother was a housewife, very good housewife at that. And my father was an instrument maker. He worked many years at the Frankfurt Arsenal in Philadelphia.
And an instrument maker, he was a...
instrument tool maker.
Tool maker.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So he was really
Precise.
knowledgeable.
Oh yes, very much so. Mm. Everything was exact. Everything he did was exact.
Yes, I was able to read your memoirs.
Oh yeah.
And from what I remember, your father was a remarkable person as far as being handy.
Oh, very handy, very handy.
And he also was knowledgeable in electronics and did repairs on what was called talking machines.
Exactly. Right. He did that for a side job all his life, I guess. We had a sign in the window that says, talking machines repaired, all makes. I remember the sign in the front window. Yeah. But he did everything, and he taught us everything we know.
Also, I remember he invented quite a few items or objects,
Yes, he did.
products.
Yes. A window to prevent it from falling down. He had an invention that you could put the window at a certain height and it would stay there. It wouldn't fall down on you like so many windows do. Garage doors the same way. You'd throw them open and it would stay right there. So that was one thing. He also made a unpickable lock. He was a locksmith at times. He did that too. He had a patent on it, but nobody ever bought it. That's a shame because and if you remember, in today's world, you see eggs. If you want to fry an egg, it gets all over the frying pan. He had a ring with a handle on it. You put the egg in there, and it stayed that size, so you would just have it for a sandwich, we'll say. He made that years and years ago. Now they put it on the market. so, okay, that's as far as I can remember. Anything else you want to know?
One product that he invented that is of some interest to me, being a person interested in records, he came up with the concentric circles inside near the label of a long playing record that prevented the needle from traveling onto the label.
Oh yeah, right, yeah.
And that is still in use today.
Oh yeah.
If you pick up a record today in a store, you will see those concentric circles.
Yeah, right. Right. Yeah, right. He was a part of that. Mm-hmm.
And how do you view your father's influence on your life?
Oh, very much. A big influence in my life. He, like I say, he taught us everything. We didn't know anything. My brother and I, brother Tom, we put hardwood stairs in. Never did it before in our life. Hardwood stairs with all the angles on the steps. Put the railing in and everything. Did that whole work. It was because of my father. He's the one. He engineered it. We did the work. Okay. All right.
And your mother's influence on your life?
Oh, well, she was a very holy person. And I developed the holiness from her. and I still have it today. So. And I was born on her birthday, and we got married. This comes later in my life, but we got married. Tried to get it the same day as they got married. That was February 22nd. We were married on the 23rd because the 22nd was not a Saturday that year. So we got it as close as we could. I'm a little ahead of the game, I guess, but I'm already married and I just got born.
From reading your memoirs on your mother, there's a lot of accounts of her ingenuity in the home. She had to do a lot with very little.
Oh, yeah.
The appliances were non-existent for all practical purposes, and some of the memories that you wrote down had to do with your mother chasing you and your brother up the steps when you were going to bed, or to get you to bed.
Yeah, right.
Can you recall any of those? Anything that sticks out in your mind there?
I'm not still hurting, but it had some influence on me, I'm sure.
From the time your parents were married, they lived with your grandmother and her son, your Uncle Tom.
Correct.
Nicknamed Unc.
Unc, right. Mm-hmm.
Did you like living with your grandmother and your uncle?
Very much. We had no problems at all. We loved it. If anybody wanted to eat leftovers, it was Uncle Tom. No matter what it was, if it was ham and cabbage, he'd have it for breakfast. He'd eat anything, I'll tell you. And as hot as he could get it, he wanted it. So.
Describe an average day in the house. And there's a couple questions that go along with that might help. How many rooms were in the house? What were the daily chores like?
We had 6 rooms. One of them was divided later into a bathroom. We didn't have a bathroom as such. There was no running water upstairs. We had a galvanized tub, and all we did is bring hot water from the kitchen up to the tub. Of course, we only did it on Saturday nights. That's the only time we could have the time to bring up enough water to take a bath. So, but yeah, he made the bathroom from the back bedroom. He split it and made it. So he was very clever the way he operated, I'll tell you. I got a lot of it from him. Most of what I know today is from him.
One of the accounts that I found very amusing and interesting is the improvisation your father did for a makeshift bed for a night of guests. Was there a door, something having to do with a door in a bathtub?
We slept in that tub. There was no running water, so there was no problem there. But when we had our cousins from Virginia, we would give our bed up and we would sleep in the tub. My brother Tom and I, we were the 2 youngest. So that's what we did for the guests. No problem.
In your memoirs as well, you mentioned games that were commonly known in the day, which are not common today. I actually ran these by my mother, who's 85 years old, to see if she had familiarization with these games, and she knew all of them.
Yeah.
And games such as roast potatoes, wire ball, step ball,
Yes.
stick ball,
Right.
marbles,
Very much.
Peggy,
Oh, everybody played Peggy.
skidooey.
Skidooey, yeah, right. Bottle tops, you use them. Mm-hmm.
Did you have a favorite game?
Marbles.
Marbles.
That was my favorite. I thought I was pretty good at that.
I bet you were.
And one of the unique things about, you were asking about things my mother did, and I've heard it recently that it's still in practice. If we had a cold, Mother would take onions, cut them up, and put them in our socks. And we slept all night, and the fever went down, believe it or not. And I just saw it recently that's still in use. Yeah, so that's a unique. The only thing is, you didn't like to walk around with the onions if you had to go to the bathroom. But other than that, the onions were very soft by the time you get up in the morning.
I wonder if there's any scientific fact behind that, medical facts.
I don't know. I never read anything about it, but I know I just heard recently that somebody has used it. It still works.
Did you use that on your children?
Yes, yes, I did. Every one of them. All 7.
In your memoirs, you mentioned that during the Depression, no one in the house was working. Did that include your father too?
Yes, it did. The only one was working was my sister Marie, my oldest sister. And she worked for the government, and she kept the house going until work was attained by my father. I guess you might have been off maybe 6, 8 months, maybe. And she kept the house going.
So your sister was how old during those years?
I guess in the 20s.
And she lived in the home?
Oh, yeah.
And she supported the home during those years?
Right.
I would imagine that was in between the world wars?
Yes, oh, yeah.
That was during the Depression?
Yeah.
Okay. How and where did you meet Esther?
It's a long story. It's still going on. I worked at a parish skating rink, Nativity Catholic Church in Philadelphia. And in the basement of the school, made into a skating rink. And my friend and I had the music, and I also was installing the shoes on the skaters as they come in. I'd put their skates on. And we'd go around, skate, all skate. Every time the announcer, all skate, everybody went to skating. One time I was out skating, and my friend announced, "This is a leap year number where the girls ask the fellas." So lo and behold, this girl come over, and I understand she was dared to ask me. I never met her before. She dared, her friend dared ask me to skate. So I've been skating ever since. And that was 1939, so that's 76 years. That's pretty good.
How many years have you been married?
This month I'll be 62 years married.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Was that the first time you met Esther?
It's the first time I met her. It was that night I put her skates on. I didn't know that, but she was saying that's the one that I've been looking. She was watching me when I'd get on the trolley car going to school every morning. I never knew she was watching me. I wasn't interested in girls, but I sure wound up with 6 girls beside my wife, so I wasn't interested in girls then, but I sure have been since.
I have a couple questions just generally about life before the war. What were you doing before you entered the military?
I was working at several jobs, one of them being RCA in Camden. I worked there for maybe 2 years, I guess. And then I got a job at Philco, which is Philadelphia, radio and television. I worked there 42 years. I was in the Army. From the Philco, I went in the Army, and after the Army, I went back to Philco. So I had completed 42 years before I retired.
In those years, were employers obligated to take employees back after a...
Yes.
They were then as well.
Mm-hmm.
Before the war and before the attack of Pearl Harbor, what was the country like before that incident, and what was their attitude towards the conflict over in Europe?
I don't think my particular age group were concerned about it. We didn't think it was that serious. The day of Pearl Harbor, I was shooting pool up in the Nativity Catholic Club. and somebody said, we just had a bombing, and we lost a lot of ships, a lot of men. And I said, I guess we're going to have to go in the Army pretty soon. So that was it. I guess I went in the year after that, 1942, December 1942, I went into service. I was drafted. I went to New Cumberland, Pennsylvania, where I was installed, but then I went to basic training at Seagirt, New Jersey. Cold as cold could be. We only had potbelly stoves. You stood around this potbelly stove. It was very warm, but as soon as you got 3 feet away, you were freezing. First time I ever knew toothpaste could freeze, and it was frozen. That's how cold it was. So, from Camp Edison, that was, in Seagirt, New Jersey. Then I went to Fort Monmouth, Florida. Then I went to Camp Crowder in Missouri. And then I went overseas shortly after that. I was moved to Massachusetts. I got to train. Thought we were going we thought we were going to Hawaii over that way. But we turned around and come back, went out of Massachusetts. So they were trying to prevent anybody from knowing where the trains were going. So you never knew where you were going. It looked like you were going north, and you looked like you were going south. Nobody knew where they were going. That's where we wound up, in Massachusetts, and went over from there.
That's quite a large number of military installations that you traveled in for training. In what period of time was that? Was that at the course of a full year?
It was all in 18 months, I would say.
Do you recall any of your instructors?
Yes, one of them was my sergeant at basic training. He was one of the dead end kids. He was my sergeant. I don't know whether you remember dead end kids. Billy Howell, you remember him? I don't know. But he was one I knew right away as soon as you saw him, who he was. He was very prevalent in TV at the time.
He was a child actor.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Later, Spanky, our gang Spanky?
Same.
Yeah.
Not the our gang, Spanky today. The our gang.
No, back then in the...
Yeah, there were about 5 young boys. One of them was a black boy.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah. Well, he was one of them.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And did you like him?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he was all right.
Even though he was your sergeant, your drill sergeant?
Yeah. But I thought the nicer you were to him, the nicer he'd be to you. So,
so you went from Massachusetts to England.
right.
And you were being prepared for what?
D-Day. We didn't know it to be D-Day. We were going into Europe, but we didn't know what it was called. We knew we were getting ready for it. So everybody was piling in over. So wonder the island over there didn't sink. There were so many people over there. So we went in through Scotland and then wound up in England. And that was, I guess, February I went over, February of 42. And we arrived there in the end of February. And in June, we went over. D-Day was June 7th. I went in June the 13th, 1 week later.
How did you feel before you began your trip there and knowing that you were going into
Very nervous, and very nervous. Didn't know what to expect, of course. And you could hear bombs going all over, airplanes going helter-skelter. You never knew when one was going to drop on you, or whether any bombs were coming into the ship, or you didn't know what to expect.
Did you land on an amphibious
Yes.
craft?
Yeah.
And this would be day 7 of the first day of the Normandy invasion.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And what did you witness when you landed?
Everybody scrambling for their life, I guess. Get out of the way. You could hear the guns going off all over. And I lost all my belongings. I lost them right there on the beach. And we had to just keep moving all the time into the woods. And then we marched practically all night, and then covered ourselves over with our tent, half a tent. We covered ourselves it was cold. Our feet were out. I remember that. I can still remember that. Feet were freezing, but we marched. I guess a good 5 or 6 hours in the dark.
You said you lost all your belongings on the initial dismounting off of the amphibious, including your rifle?
No, I did. I had that.
Were there still German installations on the beach?
Very close. Well, up on a hill. You could see them up on a hill above the beach. You didn't get in far before you could hear them shooting at us. I never shot anybody, and nobody shot me. No. I just kept walking, and then you sleep all night, and then you get up the next morning and walk again and walk again. I went over there as a signal corps man because I worked at the Philco. They immediately put me in the signal corps, and so I maintained the lines from the front to the back, from front lines back to the rear.
And what equipment did you need to carry with you to do that job?
I didn't have much equipment that I was carrying. It was in a truck, and the equipment was installed in the truck, and that's where I slept, right in that truck, same truck. They put a back on it, and it had a door you could go out in and out with. And one time we were told, as I was monitoring, you have to be careful that Germans are coming all around with our uniforms on. So beware, it's not always one of ours, could be anybody. So knock comes to the door of the truck, and I thought right away, somebody's coming. I got my gun ready, opened the door, it's my friend. He was in another truck close by. He could have gotten shot, but however, that was one of the friends I had in the Army. One of the friends I met back here too. In fact, I went to his viewing in Sayreville, New Jersey. Went up and saw him laid out. We used to visit back and forth, Philadelphia, Sayreville. And I found out he died. So we went to the funeral. All right.
I just want to ask a question myself. If we could go back just a little bit. Just a moment when you realized that you were drafted and then you were going to be going over to Europe. What were you thinking? And you can tell it to him that way. You're looking at the same direction. But yeah, what was going through your mind at that moment?
Well, you don't know what to think when you're drafted. They tell you to do this and they tell you to do that, and you don't think for yourself at all, really. They think for you, and that's what we did. We went up to New Cumberland, got our clothes, and then we went on from there. But always worried about what the next step's going to be. That's all.
During the 5 or 6 days that transpired between the initial invasion and the time that you arrived, were you and your friends apprised of what was going on? Did you have information of the progress and what was going on
Oh,
in
yeah.
that area?
We knew where they were because we were monitoring them. We knew how far away they were. I mean, they weren't very far. A week later, they weren't even a mile inside France at the time. So it was slow going.
During your time in that area of the war, did you witness any casualties?
Yes, I saw a few of them. Some of you don't even want to talk about where you were picking up prisoners, and if you didn't have a room for them, somebody got a gun and shot them so they wouldn't have to put them on the truck. That happened. I remember that. Much later, we went into the area where they had the Auschwitz concentration camp. We freed one of them, and I didn't see anything that was happening in there, but I see what had happened. And we saw the heaters where they burned them. We saw just at the end of it, they were taking the prisoners. They say the Germans didn't know this was all going on, but they collected the patrols, picked up all the Germans around to see what we were doing. They were carrying all the dead people out, and they had trenches dug. They were about, I guess, a city block long, about 8 foot wide, and they just carry bodies by bodies by bodies, side by side, and waited till the last one was a little baby, and they carried them, and that was the last one. They had a little ceremony when they buried the baby. It was awful to see that. All the prisoners had black and white striped suits on, get on their bike and try to get home, and then I found out that they weren't welcome at home because they lost, so they weren't welcome.
There's a section of your memoirs that mentions a pretty brief summary of all the different areas you went through. And your memoirs state that you entered France on June 13th, as we just covered. Normandy liberated a French town.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know, remember any details about that French town?
There's hardly anything left in it. St. Mary Glisse, that was the name of the town. Everything was flat. They destroyed the whole town.
You went through Belgium into Germany, were forced back towards Belgium, but shortly after returned again to Germany, greeted with cheers.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, we weren't greeted when we first went in, but when they saw what side their bread was buttered on, then they knew, and they accepted us a different way. Yeah. Plenty of vino. Everybody wanted vino. Of course, half of them were water. They told us it was wine, but it was only water.
How long of a period of time does that represent when you landed in Normandy to the time that you were greeted by cheers in Germany?
6 months. Mm. We thought we'd never get home. And that's all we kept saying to each other. Boy, if they'd stop buying bonds, we might get home. They were keeping us over there by the money they were putting forth. So that's what we all thought. We'll never get home. We did.
Once Berlin fell to Allied forces, the war in Europe was over. Were you aware of what was still going on in the war in the Pacific?
Just hoping that we wouldn't be called over there, that was all. We knew it was going on. And we were glad ours was over and hoping that theirs would be over soon so we wouldn't have to go. That's the only thing I thought.
Where were you when you heard that war was over as well?
The one
In Pacific.
Pacific. I was home then. I was home. I come home in October of 45. I think I was over in April, I believe, the war in the Pacific. So I was home already.
When you were home, did you still have the fear that you would be sent over in the other regional war?
No, it was over by that time.
Mm-hmm. You were in Leipzig, Germany in May of 1945.
Yeah.
There were mass suicides in 1945, the month before. Were you aware of that? The German civilians, there was a mass suicide there?
No, I was not. I was not.
Okay. I'm familiar with that happening in the Japanese theater, the Pacific region, when the soldiers would approach, but that actually happened in the German theater as well, the European theater as well. Yeah, yeah. There were a number of people mentioned on the back of some of the photos that you have, and names such as John Ellman, Skip Gadasco,
Yeah, right,
Jim Joyce, Ed Scott,
right.
Russ Anderson, Vic Cooper, Jim Boyd, Walter
Slazinski.
Yeah.
That's the one I spoke of. That I went to
That's the one.
we went to the funeral.
That's the one that almost approached the back of the...
He was a married man, and of course he misses his wife all the time. But what he did, one of the parachutes that came down in the fields, he picked it up and used it to make him feel like he was home with the silky next to him. So that's what he did. Yeah.
Art Sewar,
Yeah.
Little Joe.
Little Joe, I don't remember.
Okay.
I don't remember that one.
All right.
One of them, Seward, he was the driver of the truck, and his wife took sick, in fact, died. He went home. That's how come I took the driving over. I was also the operator, but I was a driver. That's the first time I learned how to drive over there in the dark.
Was that on your initial landing in Normandy, or was that afterwards where you learned to drive?
Oh, I was driving after I was in France for a month, I guess. He went home, so I had to drive the rest of the time.
Was there a story where your ears almost froze as you were driving?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, right. And I went to the medics, and they said, don't bend it because it'll break. It was frozen, yeah. Yeah, that was the Battle of the Bulge at that time. That's what that was. We had our dinner, Christmas dinner, on the fender of the truck with snow all over. I remember that. It wasn't a hot dinner. It was frozen.
Does anything stick out in your mind about the Battle of the Bulge, your experience there?
No, just the fear that we're going to go backwards and back into the English Channel again. That's what they thought they were going to do. But the forces turned around and beat them back. But that's all I remember, that we were afraid we were going to go back. We didn't.
How did you stay in contact with family and friends back home?
By V-mail. That's what they called it at that time. I was writing weekly, I guess. I was writing to my girlfriend at the time, my family.
Esther.
Esther, yeah, and we used to get packages. I used to get packages, and I was one of the few that got packages. So every time I got a package, everybody joined in. They were glad to see a package come. The only trouble was I smoked at that time. I smoked cigarettes, and people would send the cigarettes. Well, this one package from my aunt, it came with cigarettes, but it also had a box of powder which broke, so the cigarettes were smelly like powder all the time. But you were glad to get any kind of a cigarette. Thankfully, I stopped smoking.
What forms of recreation did you have, if any, when you were overseas? Was there any downtime?
No recreation.
This is where I make the paper noise. Where were you when the war ended?
I was in Belgium, so I don't remember the town. I don't think it was Leipzig it was outside of Leipzig when it actually ended.
Just to let you know, we're almost done. How did you return home? Was it by ship?
By ship.
By ship.
Yeah, right. And train.
How were you received by your family and community?
Oh. Well, you can imagine how we were accepted by the family. My mother, father, my sister Marie, and my girlfriend Esther was there waiting for me at the train. A welcome sight.
How did you readjust to civilian life? Was that difficult?
No, that was easy. That was easy.
Are you a member of any veterans organizations? If so, which?
I was in the American Legion, but I had no desire to go. There was no interest for me. So I just discontinued my...
You came home in December of 1945, and you were married in the following February. Can you fill in any details of this?
Well, I was engaged. While I was overseas, I was engaged. My sister Marie bought the engagement ring, but that was in Philadelphia. When I got home, of course, I put the ring on Esther then. And other than that, we start making plans right away. Short, simple mass and a ceremony. I guess a party we had. It wasn't a big thing like they have today. It was in a restaurant. We had a group of maybe 20 people, something like that. My best friend was my best man, Bill Sands.
How did your wartime experiences affect your life?
Never want to go again. Wouldn't want anybody else to go either. It's not pleasant. There was no pleasantry with the whole experience.
What message would you like to leave for future generations who will hear or view this interview?
Don't get drafted, I guess. That's the only thing. Stay away from war. I hope it all goes away. So.
I have a few more questions I want to ask, just a couple that I thought would really help also frame everything that you're saying. And I was just wondering maybe if there was, like a most difficult part, if you could really think about being away for so long, was it kind of the danger, was it maybe being separated from family? What was the hardest part, I guess, of your whole wartime experience personally?
Being separated was the best, I guess, the best I could say was the worst part of it was being separated. More so than even fear of what's going to happen over there. Even though I heard things going on over there, they weren't close enough to affect me, other than maybe the next one will. I could hear them going over me. Oh, that one passed, that one passed. It's getting closer, though, getting closer. And then it went past, so it went past us. But that's the only other fear I had. Will I get hit or won't I? Because we were in a foxhole. Well, it wasn't a foxhole, it was a cement block. Two of us in there. And every time it'd come over, oh, what's happening? Gets it closer, I think. And we'd try to sleep. He'd sleep for a while and he'd say, what do you say we turn around? There wasn't that much room. We had to turn together. So that's the only fear I had, that the next one might be me. That was all.
Wow. And I was wondering too if you know, and I'm sure it was, but you know, would you say there was a dramatic, you know, how did the war affect your life and just how you see the world at, you know, once you got back, kind of just, you know, your viewpoint of everything?
I didn't give it too much thought. I was just glad I was home. That was all.
And my last question then is, you know, do you think that it's important for the younger generations to, you know, remember veterans and their history, especially with so many veterans coming home now from, you know, the Middle East?
Oh yeah, I hope they always remember them. Yeah. Yeah, I never forget them, I'll tell you. I know what it is, but they're seeing a lot worse than I did, I tell you.
Do you think they're seeing worse now than what you saw?
Very much so, yeah.
Why, would you want to explain that? Why do you think it's a little worse, or a little more worse, you know, however?
Well, you see the details today, and I didn't see anything like that in my time. I saw enough. I saw too much, but not as much as they have seen.
Longer deployments. They have longer deployments.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We only went over once and come back.
Yeah.
They're over 3 and 4 times.
Yeah. You wonder where it's all headed.
Yeah, right.
Well, thank you very much for this interview, and we want to thank you for your service to our country.
Quite well. I'm glad I could do it, and glad I could do the interview. I hope it was good enough.
Yeah, so good. Thank you.
Okay.
You got
All right.
a lot of
Oh, I
awesome.
forgot to turn the microphones on.
Oh,
We gotta do it again.
how'd I do?
You did fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.